In 2018, Jay Edidin gave a speech, "You Are Here, Finding Ourselves in Each Other in Stories," as part of a TEDx Harvard College talk. The talk focuses on how Edidin, an autistic adult, uses stories to navigate the world and how the characters that he sees himself reflected in led to the revelation that he is trans. Prior to the revelation, Edidin often felt represented in male characters with autistic traits, but had yet to find a female character with the same traits that he felt represented by.
There were no fictional women like me, there weren't representations of women like me in media, and so readers were primed not to recognize women like me in real life either. Now, by this point, I had started writing a follow-up essay, and this one was also about autism and narratives, but specifically focused on how they intersected with gender and representation in media. And in context of this essay, I went about looking to see if I could find even one female character who had that cluster of traits I'd been looking for. And I was asking around in autistic communities. And I got a few more or less useful one-off suggestions and some really, really splendid arguments about semantics and standards. And then I got one answer over and over and over in community after community after community. Leverage, people told me. You have to watch Leverage. So I watched Leverage.
The rich and powerful take what they want. We steal it back for you.
Leverage is a con and heist show that originally aired for 5 seasons on TNT from 2008 to 2012. The show features an ensemble cast that makes up the heist crew. We have Nate, the mastermind, played by Timothy Hutton.
All right, let's go break the law just one more time.
Sophie, the grifter, played by Gina Bellman.
We'll go find some bad guys. Bad guys have money.
Elliot, the hitter, played by Christian Kane.
That's what I do.
And Hardison, the hacker, played by Aldous Hodge.
Age of the geek, baby. We run the world.
But for this video, the most important character is Parker, the thief, who is played by Beth Riesgraf.
Nice job on the zip line.
Totally thought she was gonna break a leg. Not bad for a first time.
Jay Edidin also feels that Parker is the most important, so I'll let him explain a bit about her.
What's most important, what Leverage has, is Parker. Parker is a master thief, and she is the best of the best of the best in ways that all of Leverage's characters are the best of the best. And superficially, she looks like the kind of woman you see on TV. So she's young, and she's slender, and she's blonde, and she's attractive, but in a sort of approachable way. And all of that familiarity is brilliant misdirection, because the thing is, there are no other women like Parker on TV. Because Parker, even if it's never explicitly stated in the show, Parker is coded incredibly clearly as autistic.
The current DSM-5 diagnosis for autism has the following criteria: deficits in social, emotional reciprocity, ranging, for example, from abnormal social approach and failure of normal back-and-forth conversation.
And this is Emily, she's the eldest, and her sister Anne, and little Charlotte. She's the baby of the family.
Oh, that one's really cute.
Uh-huh.
What's wrong with that one? And it looks like a dog in a baby suit.
She is hot. It's very hot, don't
Hot. Warm? Cold? Why are we staring?
Deficits in nonverbal communicative behaviors used for social interaction.
Today did not go well, but that's all right. You know, we learn when we fail. We're gonna go back to basics, and we're gonna do a little role play. We're gonna start with persuasion techniques.
Yeah? How can I help you?
We're investigating your colleague Matt Kerrigan's car accident.
So you don't think it was an accident?
Of course not. She did the finger thing. You got that. Everybody gets that.
Did I do it right?
No, this guy.
And deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships.
I'm glad she finally got closure.
Who?
Ashley. You need to talk to him.
Who?
Hardison. You don't like it when he talks to other women.
I don't care who he talks to.
What you're feeling is called jealousy, Parker.
I'm not jealous. No, I'm not jealous. No, it's just that when I see them together, I don't like it.
For diagnosis, you must also have at least 2 of the 4 types of social communication impairments and restricted repetitive patterns of behavior. Stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects or speech.
It's amazing. I've always wanted to do that.
Well, I could show you some stuff as soon as I get your refill.
Okay. That's worth killing for.
Ultraviolet checks out, paper checks out, the watermarks, the ink, it all checks out.
There's a whole container of it from Iraq, of all places. It's got to be counterfeit.
It's real. It feels real.
Hey.
Insistence on sameness, inflexible adherences to routines, or ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behavior.
Carity III. He took over Carity Diamonds 4 years ago after his old man retired. And in that small amount of time, he managed to drive the business straight into the ground by living way beyond his means. I'm talking drugs, booze, women. According to his credit card statements, what are you doing? What?
What?
It's distracting.
Well, the couch is just feeling a little empty.
Elliot, will you please sit next to Parker?
No, I'm sitting here now.
Guys, all right, we all miss Sophie. We just have to adapt.
I got this. Move.
Please.
Go. Bye. Go. You happy? I care.
Extended forecast for the next 5 days.
Unusually high temperatures here in Boston, ranging
Parker.
Unseasonably warm.
and the tri-state area almost 60 degrees
Thank
by
you.
the end of the week, which is
Look, the weather forecast is the same on every single channel. Sorry.
But it's not Christmas without snow.
Parker, you're not gonna get a white Christmas this year.
All we need is for this low-pressure system from Canada to come down and bring us a blast of cold air and precipitation.
Yeah, I'll get right on that. Where are you going?
Caroline.
Oh,
Caroline. You do realize there's a Christmas party in the bar.
Oh, son of a...
well, I want flurries. Make it happen.
Highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus.
Boston Independent, State Street branch of the Boston Bank, Commonwealth Loan and Securities. Now,
First Independent's got a Glen Reader alarm system, Series F900. 2 guards in the front, 1 guard in the back. Cameras record, not monitored. Daily turnover, 2 million. State Street, mostly commercial papers and loans. But they do have bearer bonds in a basement lockdown room, just takes a key and a retina scanner. Commonwealth, their alarm system's a holdover from the 70s, but it's... What? What do you guys do on your weekends?
Money's good, too.
And hyper or hyporeactivity to sensory input or unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment.
That's his superpower. Can I taste it? You should. Go on. Tastes like cold. Yeah.
Don't torture her.
Oh, okay, all right, Parker, you're next. Put your hands out.
How did you know? Non-sequential serial numbers? My favorite.
Oh.
Parker hits pretty much all of this criteria. In fact, when my autistic best friend and I took the RADSAR test, which is a self-report questionnaire designed to identify adult autistics who escape diagnosis due to a subclinical level presentation using the behavior that is depicted in the show, Parker was rated 131 out of 240. Someone is likely autistic if they score over 65, and the mean score for autistic people is 133.83. Autism is never mentioned within the show in relation to Parker, though many characters refer to her as crazy or insane due to her autistic traits. It's worth mentioning that Parker, who had been growing up in the 80s and 90s, would have most likely not been diagnosed as a female child in that era. We do see her in a flashback as a child with her social worker doing an exercise on identifying emotions, so there is a chance that she was diagnosed as a child and wasn't ever told. She also had a very traumatic childhood, one that involved abuse in the foster care system, one that would not only hinder her from being diagnosed as a child, but would also hinder her from seeking an adult diagnosis, as that requires verification that autistic behavior was present when she was under the age of 12. With the exception of a mentor character that we meet in Season 3 that knew Parker as a teen, there is no one to verify the presentation of these behaviors. And yet, as someone who is not autistic, it seems pretty clear to me that Parker is. She displays a lot of neurodivergent behavior that, as someone who spends a good amount of time around autistic people, reads to me as on the spectrum. And it's notable that many other fans identify Parker as autistic or identify with her because they are also autistic. And I think that it is something incredibly special, or as Edidin says, a revelation, to come out of a con and heist show from 2008, even if Parker being autistic is not canon. Or is it? In 2008, Dean Devlin, executive producer of Leverage and director of 16 of the 77 episodes, said the following in a behind-the-scenes interview promoting the show.
There is Parker, who has no other name than Parker, who is probably the world's best thief.
Parker is a really interesting woman. She had a pretty tough upbringing, pretty tough life.
Unfortunately, she's also a bit crazy. And she has a very mild case of Asperger's and really doesn't understand how other people react to things in the world.
So Parker's canonically autistic, right? Case closed, we can all go home. Word of God is that she's autistic. Except, unfortunately, not exactly. I will say, if you're happy with this confirmation and don't want to get into the discussion of what Word of God means in terms of Leverage, you are welcome to peace out now. I'm not discounting that Parker is autistic because she is. I want to talk about Word of God means in a show where there is not one but 4 executive producers. Still with me? Cool. What is Word of God? According to TV Tropes, Word of God is a statement regarding some ambiguous or undefined aspect of a work. The Word of God comes from someone considered to be the ultimate authority, such as the creator, director, or producer. Such edicts can even go against events as were broadcast due to someone making a mistake. Some cases of Word of God that you may recognize are George Lucas's take that Han didn't shoot first, or The Legend of Korra creators confirming that Korrasami was intended to be a romantic couple. Many shows keep a story Bible or continuity Bible to keep track of the plot and characters of a show. Word of God may confirm contents of that Bible that the show did not depict on screen or depart from it entirely. With social media and near constant access to showrunners, Word of God has become much more prevalent over the past decade. See J.K. Rowling's near constant and unnecessary expansions of the wizarding world. Some fans count Word of God as canon, where other fans will only accept what is shown on screen as canon. It's my personal opinion that Word of God works best when there is only one main creator. When there is only one main creator, producer, or writer, there is no one else to contradict the creator's interpretation of the media and its characters. For example, Alex Hirsch both created and executive produced Gravity Falls, an animated TV show, so anything he tweets about can be taken fully as Word of God. If he intended something to happen, but wasn't able to, or wasn't allowed to, fully depict it in the show, the intent is still there.
Please revise the action of Blubs putting his arm around Durland. As noted in previous concerns, their affectionate relationship should remain comical versus flirtatious.
Nope. They're buddies. Chill out.
The gesture is approved in this context.
It gets more complicated when you have a show like Leverage, which has 2 creators and 4 executive producers, who all wrote and directed episodes over the course of the series, and who all have personal takes on the plots, themes, and characters. We've already mentioned the interview that Dean Devlin did at the start of the show, where he stated that Parker has a mild case of autism, and if you want to take that as canon confirmation, I'm not stopping you. I think it is worth noting that that interview was during promotion of Season 1, and, as far as I can tell, he did not mention autism in relation to Parker past that season. Chris Downey was a co-creator of the show and wrote several episodes. Mark Roskin directed episodes along with executive producing. I have not been able to find anything that either Mark or Chris have stated directly regarding Parker being autistic. Notably, Mark Roskin seems to feature less in promotion of the series and is the only executive producer to not have a Wikipedia page. This brings me to the next co-creator, executive producer, writer, and director, John Rogers. John Rogers ran a blog, Kung Fu Monkey, during the duration of the series where he posted commentary on the episodes as they aired and took questions from fans. He also hosted the commentary tracks that were available on the DVDs for each Leverage season. Due to the level of information that he has put out and the amount of interaction that he's happy to do with fans on his blog and on his personal Twitter, Rogers is usually the one that fandom takes as word of God. Which is unfortunate because Rogers is also the creator who says that Parker is not intended to be autistic. In the commentary for the Season 1 episode, The Juror Number 6 Job, a Parker-centric episode where the team makes her attend jury duty to learn how to socialize better, and she uncovers a conspiracy happening during the trial, the following exchange takes place between Chris Downey, Jonathan Frakes, and John Rogers.
Yeah. One of the appeals of this episode was putting Parker in jury duty where being around regular people would scare her and test her
Does Parker have Asperger's syndrome?
It's Asperger-like. I mean, really what we're saying is that the trauma of her childhood sort of froze a lot of her emotional development, as will happen. Froze a lot of her emotional development at that time. But it's much more, she's never lived anything approaching a normal life. Right. You know, and that's so she's utterly unable to. Hey, I know high-functioning geeks who work in the software industry who are worse off than her as far as interacting with normal humans. So I think anytime you're in a specialized lifestyle, it cripples your ability to interact in sort of general groups. You know, hell, certainly one of the reasons I want to stand up is to find other crazy people like myself.
Sidebar, a lot of those high-functioning geeks John Rogers is talking about are probably autistic. I think it's kind of interesting that John Rogers is trying to say that they didn't intend for Parker to have autism, but seems to also be struggling to explain what they are trying to depict with Parker's characterization. It seems like he is unable to confirm that she is autistic, but he is also unable to describe her personality traits. This is from Season 1, but was recorded after all of the season had aired, so he and the team had written a backstory for Parker and had an idea of the trauma that she had received and how that would have affected her. Incidentally, in the Season 3 commentaries, John Rogers says that if you have a story Bible or a character Bible for your show, you are doing something wrong because it doesn't allow for flexibility in adding material in the show. That same commentary, he says not to try to make a timeline out of Parker's backstory because it's just an amorphous blob of crime. Make of that what you will. There is one other mention of autism in relation to Parker in the commentaries, also in Season 1. Albert Kim, the writer for The Stork Job, another Parker-centric episode where she is forced to confront the trauma given to her by her childhood in the foster care system when the team helps a Serbian orphan, also spoke on the commentaries to say, well...
Right, this is a great Parker episode, and, I found that writing for Parker is actually the most fun for me. I mean, because on the surface, she's got all these sort of emotional quirks and slightly Asperger's-like aspect to it, which is fun to write for the comedic bits. But, you also get the sense that deep down, there's this wellspring of darkness and blackness there, which is really fun to play with.
This quote I don't particularly care for because it is equating Parker having autistic traits to them being comedic. Using autistic traits as a punchline and for harmful jokes was rather prevalent around 2008 to 2009 when the show was airing. There's nothing wrong with autistic traits being used for comedic purposes so long as the character and autism are not the butt of the joke. For example, there's lots of comedic moments with the character Matilda in the show Everything's Gonna Be Okay, but while her autism might get her into comedic situations, she's not being made fun of for being autistic within the show. As another example, the show Not Dead Yet uses the main character Nell insultingly asking her autistic roommate Edward if he has Asperger's as a comedic beat at Nell's expense. The show later returns to the moment for Edward to explain autism spectrum disorder and help the two characters form a better understanding. And anyway, it's not like when the Leverage showrunners hired Beth Riesgraf, they intended to be writing an autistic character or because they were intending to use autism as comedy, right? Dean Devlin mentioned repeatedly in interviews and promotion during Season 1 that Beth was hired because she gave Parker autistic traits in her audition. I found 3 instances actually where he mentioned this. All of these interviews were done as part of Season 1 promotion, so it's possible that more existed that I can no longer find. In all of these interviews, Dean mentions that Beth was the only actress that wasn't playing a hot, sexy action girl, and instead created this really strange Asperger's-like character that had the vice president of content creation of TNT asking if Beth is crazy. Which... it's probably relevant to mention that Beth has stated that she was unhappy with her audition and came back to ask John Rogers if she could re-audition with her new realization about the character.
You had a funny story, right?
Well, I did have kind of a funny story. I read the script and thought it was great.
I told you to ask me this.
When I read the script, I thought it was cool. It was a nice take on
different sort of character.
So I looked at it and it said, Elliot walks in wearing wire rim glasses and then takes a sip of his tea. Threw it.
I remember reading that script and thinking, this is really cool, this is special.
Tried to hit the couch, missed the couch, hit the wall, went behind the couch.
You could take the names of the characters out and just look at the dialogue, and by page 3 you would know who was speaking.
Age of the geek, baby. We run the world.
I was very happy that as the African American, the character I was playing was very intelligent because those roles are very scarce.
The description for Parker was like every adjective in the book you could think of. You know, it was like, she's the chubby math and geek girl on the inside, but oozing dangerous sexuality on the outside. But she's smart, but she's crazy.
2 days later, my agent calls and he goes, what'd you think? I go, it's not for me, the role's not for me. He's like, well, you know, John Rogers really kind of wrote this role with you in mind. And I was like, what, John Rogers? He's like, yeah, and Dean Devlin's. I go, whoa, wait a minute.
Happened to be my 21st birthday when I actually booked the job. So I was a happy camper.
I left the room and it was one of those moments where you go down to your car and something clicks and you really get something that you didn't get in the room.
Reach under the couch, grab the script, open it up. Elliot Spencer again with wire rim glasses, sipping tea, and I'm like, and it says walks into a bar and kills everybody in it. And I went, no!
So I walked back up and they're like, well, he's got about 5 more people to see. And I was like, oh, awesome. So I waited.
And as soon as I left the audition, I told my mama, well, I think I left out of here with a job.
John comes out of the room and I'm like, hi, so listen. And by the time I was done, I had him like this that I didn't even realize, but I got so excited that I was like, no, just let me do it again.
I ran in while they were auditioning the girls even. The guys had already gone through. I ran in, I went, I'm sorry, and auditioned, and I ended up getting the role.
And they called us at night and said it was done. I said, all right, I told you.
And John was like, no, I think you're fine. I think you got it. I think you got the character.
And if that teaches you anything, read the script.
Look, I'm not saying that Beth was hired because they wanted to play autism as comedy in this show, but it might have had a factor. It seems like that angle was quickly dropped after season 1. As I've said, the only commentaries I've found that discuss autism in relation to Parker are from the first season, and all of the Dean Devlin promotion is from that same time period. So what caused them to drop it? My galaxy brain theory is that there was another, much more popular show on air at the time that was regularly invoking autism as comedy, and by 2008 was starting to get criticism for it.
Bazinga.
Maybe they saw this criticism and had the sudden realization that using autism as comedy would be a pretty shitty thing to do. Or, and what probably is more likely to have happened, they began to question why Parker was this way and what might have happened to her to bring her to this point. From the pilot, it's clear that she didn't have a good childhood, and I'm sure that once the writing team started discussing what happened to her, it became less comedic and a lot more sad. This could have inspired the shift away from the potential comedic uses of her autistic traits and more of a focus on how the character could grow emotionally over the next 5 seasons. So this is where we leave off then. Parker's autism is canon, but it's also not, or maybe it's only canon through season 1. After all, that's the furthest it's discussed by the showrunners of the series. However, there's one other voice I would like us to listen to before we make our final determination. In 2010, as part of promotion for Season 3, several members of the cast of Leverage attended and were part of a panel for the show at San Diego Comic-Con. The panel was recorded by a couple of audience members and can be found on YouTube. The cast spoke about the show and the upcoming season before opening up the floor for audience members to ask questions. During the question and answer session, an audience member asked Beth the following.
Good job. My question is for Beth. Am I echoing? Excellent. Okay. Do you think that there's any chance your character is a little bit Asperger's?
To which Beth responded,
Why? Why, yes. She has a little people problem.
Well, you know, we haven't defined it as that. You know, I think that she's unique, and there's certainly qualities that resemble Asperger's, I think, and you know, some people have likened her personality traits to that, but it hasn't ever been defined to that, partly because I think we didn't want it to be restricted to one sort of thing, or, you know, we wanted it to be, anyway, open to what's going on for her, so.
Perfect, thank you.
And all of the answers about whether or not Parker is autistic, this is the one that I find the most satisfying. Beth is acknowledging that many fans see Parker as autistic, even if that wasn't the show's intention, and they haven't assigned that label to Parker. But even knowing that Parker is interpreted in this way, Beth hasn't altered her portrayal of Parker to make her more neurotypical or try to steer away from autistic traits. She's continued to play Parker as the same weird, socially awkward, competent thief that she is. This feels to me that Beth accepts the interpretation of Parker even if she doesn't necessarily agree with it. This also seems to be confirmed by a John Rogers tweet from 2020, a full 8 years after the final season aired. Beth portrayed a character with autistic traits, and the writing team wrote to her performance, which led to Parker's autistic traits becoming reoccurring within the show. If every showrunner's word of God is a little different, which one becomes the canon? Is it the showrunner who wrote or directed the most episodes, the showrunner who appears on the most commentaries, or the showrunner who has the interpretation we most like or agree with? What word of God should be taken as confirmed canon, and what should be disregarded? I think that coming to the same consensus on a character is difficult when you have a large number of people working mostly equally on the same show. The showrunners of Leverage are very open in the commentaries on how much they love these characters, how they all have favorites, and how they all have particular stories and skill sets they like depicting. And honestly, Leverage is a better show for it. I don't think it'd be nearly as good of a show if they only had one producer, a smaller writing team, and only a couple of directors they leaned on. Leverage is the way it is because it's so collaborative, even if it leads to the showrunners disagreeing or having different interpretations of the content of the show. See also the Leverage OT3. As someone who is heavily involved with fandom, I think canon is what you choose it to be. Canon can be only what is presented on screen, or you can include off-screen elements, or you can throw it all out in lieu of your own alternate universe. There's really no wrong way to do it. And again, based on what I've seen on screen, Parker is autistic. I don't need it confirmed by the showrunners for it to be true to me. The original run of Leverage ended after 5 seasons in 2012. It was picked up by Freevee in 2020 for a revival, with most of the original cast returning. There's been some shakeups in the crew, notably, most of the writing team is different, though John Rogers, Dean Devlin, Mark Roskett, and Chris Downey all return in some capacity, whether it's directing, writing, producing, or consulting. It's worth mentioning, John Rogers will be returning as showrunner for the 3rd season, which was announced in late 2023. In the revival, Parker is more explicitly neurodivergent and seems to be masking less. In the first episode, she mentioned seeing a psychologist. She stems excitedly over getting to see new vents. She has a running motif through the episodes of using puppets to understand her emotions. While I don't expect Parker to be confirmed as autistic in canon, both because of the nature of the show and because of the reality of adult diagnosis, I love that her neurodiversity continues to be a key asset of her character. I'm excited to see where the revival takes these characters that I love and what new canon it brings to the Leverage universe.